Hi, this is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. And I do a bunch of different kinds of healing and support work. One of the things I do is as an evolutionary astrologer. I'm also a channel and a medium and an energy worker at times. And this video is an astrology video. I've been doing a lot of videos lately about COVID-19 and stuff. This is just something that's been coming up in my mind with two new tutoring students lately, where I find myself answering certain questions in a certain way, and I realize, right, I haven't taught about that in a while. So I want to offer you this teaching on not being. Basically, I think of this as thinking astrologically, thinking in an astrological fashion, not in terms of specifics. And so I'm going to explain this. I have no idea how long the video will be because it's a big topic, and I want to make really clear this thing I think is really important. And my students always find it important because, well, I'll explain why. But anyway, it turns out to be true. It's just not a perspective that we always learn when we study astrology from books or websites or with people. So first, let me just make a comment on where I am. I live in a hotel right now, and I have since early November. So everybody else being on kind of altered schedules and a little bit of a lockdown or quarantine, I've kind of been there for a long time. That's what this thing you see behind me is. That's the window. If I close that thing, the light doesn't come in. It feels like a dungeon. So anyway, so that's what's going on here with all these videos with the boring backdrop. So first of all, this idea, thinking astrologically. When I made the note to do the video, what I wrote was avoiding being too specific. That was my note. And this is because when you learn about astrology, for example, moon, in someone's chart, you will learn that moon represents family, women, I would say community and belonging, but somebody might say mother. You might learn Saturn stands for the father, or sun for the father, Mars for men, Venus for women. If you crystallize that in your head, you're going to miss a lot regarding how people actually live. Because moon in that person's chart, in fact, represents not mother necessarily. It can, but it may not. It's that person's style of nurturing, or how that person relates to his or her emotions, or kind of what opens that person's heart, what that person needs to do to feed the heart, to create happiness and safety and security, and models of care that might come down. I use that for series. That might ring a bell for you too. But with moon, if you look at a person's chart and say, mother, you're being too specific. That person might say, like, let's say it's a Capricorn moon. That person might say, yeah, my mom is, kind of straight edge, disciplinarian, whatever. Or my mom is a little distant or controlling or something. I don't know, some stereotype of Capricorn. Not warm, right? Or she's really into her work, so she wasn't always available for certain things. But you want to reach the person as a whole. This is my bias anyway. Like, in other words, astrology isn't about the data tables that you memorize. It's about the actual person. So somebody with a Capricorn moon, because there are other factors in the chart that describe nurturing. Fourth house, a sign of Cancer, something about the south node and its aspects, south node of the moon. There are different things in the chart that can indicate different things. So if you focus on moon as mother, what you miss is how that person may experience nurturing with any family member, right? If you focus on Mars as men and Venus as women in that person's life, what you miss is Mars is actually about assertive people, not only men. Venus is about people who are close to us, or people who are drawn to us, or we're drawn to them, like magnetized, attracted, that kind of thing. Who do we want to like us? That's more Venus. So you miss a lot if you get very specific. So one thing that I do, and this will become evident to you if you have a Soul's Journey soundbite or you work with me in person, a Soul's Journey soundbite's a 30-minute overview of your multi-life journey. Yes, your whole multi-life journey in 30 minutes. It's a soundbite. Anyway, also in the Soul Journey soundbite database, I take all the soundbites, I anonymize them, take away the names or whatever, give them an inventory number, and it's a searchable online learning tool. So it becomes apparent as you listen to me do soundbites or listen to me do readings. But essentially what I'll do is I'll paint a picture of a number of possibilities to outline the theme. And then I will say, if it's this, it may look like this or this. If it's this other thing, it may look like this or this. To some people listening, it might sound like if you're listening to somebody else's soundbite, it might sound to part of your brain like I'm being too vague. But what I'm doing is I'm reaching the person, because over the course of decades of experience, in the case of a soundbite that tells the multi-life or karmic story, I'm reaching that person on multiple levels, even from other lifetimes, and things they've known about themselves that people don't see, always. I'm going to give you a couple of examples with like Pluto and the nodes. Pluto in the South Node, maybe South Node ruler, I'll throw in an example. But if I paint a thematic picture, let's say I paint 5 possibilities. Let's say that one of those things is really loud in the person's life history. That person will be kind of blown away. But let's say that 2 others are not as loud, but present, and maybe the person understands the 4th thing, like, yeah, I kind of feel that about myself, though I haven't really lived it. What I'm doing as I'm painting this broad stroke picture is I'm saying over the course of many, 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 many lifetimes, millions, billions, not 108 or 10 or 6 lifetimes. These are the brain's idea of how can I get off this wheel of suffering. No. Millions and millions and millions of lifetimes that every one of us has. Because there isn't a finish line when we prove that we're good, we get to get off the wheel of samsara. That's not real. That's a religious teaching. That's a wishful thinking, honestly. And of course, I hope that doesn't offend you, but it's just what I've learned through channeling and being a medium, working with spirits and ascended masters and angels. It's not like that. There's no finish line except for us as a collective once we perfect going from fear into love. So we all individually have this path to learn how to bring love and compassion to difficult things in our lives, and we each have a unique profile of difficult things over many lifetimes. Okay. So the complete model of soul, by the way, is in my course, Evolutionary Astrology Basics 1. It's not an astrology basics course, it's evolutionary basics. So basically come in to that course, a home study version of it, if you already know houses, signs, my God, planets, aspects. Like if you already understand those basics, then this course will make sense to you. But I present the model of soul in its entirety and then talk about the karmic story symbols. So I'll lay something out and it reaches multiple levels of a person and lets them say, oh, that's not my moon. That's actually my my big sister who raised me. Or, oh, that's not my mom. That's my dad. Or with Mars, that person might say, oh, no, that's not men in my life. That's my cousin who's really aggressive, who's a woman, right? So I want to teach you to focus on the energies in play so you understand how to reach people in the most meaningful ways possible. This is why I was drawn to the work of Stephen Forrest, an evolutionary astrologer whom a lot of you are aware of his work. I dove in 2003 after I overheard a friend of a then friend say something about the Saturn return, and I was just 30, and I was like, something, my computer alien self was like, something about that, I must learn everything about. So anyway, stuck in my head at that point. So anyway, I dove in and studied astrology like it was my job for like 7 months. And of all the voices in astrology, Steve Forrest appealed to me the most because he formed his approach by listening to what people actually experienced. When he was young, in his teens and early 20s, and he took, this is the story he'll tell, he took what he learned from books to clients and said, here's what you're probably experiencing, or here's what I would expect you to be experiencing. And a lot of them said, no, I'm not experiencing that. And he was like, oh, maybe I should listen to you. And then it opened him up to be able to make a very humane approach to astrology. That's what appealed to me. So as I was reading stuff like, you know, when Mars transits your Pluto, stay out of dark alleys. I was like, wow, are you kidding me? Like, I was like, what's with the robotic fear mongering or what? Anyway, so this humanistic approach, I want to teach you, as Stephen has taught me, I want to teach you how to reach people in the most effective way possible. And so, like in my own life, in my own chart, my moon is opposed to my Saturn. So you might assume that my parents are at odds with each other. Well, it kind of was true, but you shouldn't lead with that. You should say what you need to do for your heart. You may feel opposed or blocked by authority figures. It may show up as in your family, right? Because then as you're telling that to me, I'm automatically, if I'm listening to a reading from somebody, I'm automatically aware of if that touches on my experience. Now, different kinds of, when I'm pursuing happiness, different kinds of authority figures perhaps, or institutions or structures or rules, Saturn, right, might oppose my heart, my perception of my ability to make myself happy. Consequently, my ability to do my Saturn, develop maturity, whatever, might feel opposed by other people's emotions or what people need, moon, right? But if you say moon is mother, Saturn is father, you're not gonna, you're gonna talk about one little teeny sliver of my experience that doesn't help me evolve my consciousness, and doesn't help me understand myself better. And that's the only reason why I do astrology, is to help you, well, first my own chart, to help me understand myself better, but I want you to understand yourself better as consciousness. And also those specific examples of, how people in your life might, people in your family or your life might, or do bring to life certain symbols in your chart. Well, the only reason they're in my life is because I need examples outside me of these aspects which are taking place in my psyche. So if you say this moon is your mother, Tom, Saturn is your father, you're missing the mark on so many levels. You're not thinking astrologically. You're not helping me understand the bigger picture so that I can truly understand what's happening. It's actually a good example too in my own chart. This is about me. It's the only reason why I do astrology, is so I can talk about myself. Did you know that? Anyway, so I'll pretend I didn't say that. Oh my gosh, now I'm self-conscious. No, so my south node's in the 10th house in Cancer. So my north node's in Capricorn in the 4th house. And there are people who have been thrown by that example too, because they're saying, wait a minute, Capricorn, Cancer, whatever. They're not thinking astrologically. They're looking at it literally, and a lot of people do, literally in a too specific way. Like they'll assume, oh, well, south node's in the house of your father, your north node's in the house of your mother. Well, houses and signs and planets are not the same. They have archetypal overlap. There's a video where I'm ranting about that here on YouTube. Something like houses and signs are not the same, damn it. Something like that. You can watch me freak out and try not to get angry and frustrated. So let's use an example from the karmic story, and just for your reference, if you're not familiar with how I do evolutionary astrology. And by the way, what I do is a third stream of evolutionary astrology. Steve Forrest and Jeff Green developed theirs roughly in time, but when I was learning about karma and soul from their work, from Steve and then from Jeff's work separately, I didn't study with Jeff, I had questions about soul, because I was like, I just want to understand more. This didn't really ring true for me in the way I needed. So I asked if there was help, and an ascended master, Hermes, Thoth, Jehudi, Saint Germain, came through. So, and started answering all these questions. So that's kind of what I do. And so when I talk about Pluto, for example, well, let me say the 4-step story. Pluto, the empowerment journey of the soul, sets out for the human. What does this person need to do to make life feel meaningful, to make her life feel meaningful, but yet will bring up the cache of unconscious emotional memories from many lifetimes, the fears and pain and anger and disappointment and despair from many lifetimes. That's Pluto. Number 2, the south node of the moon. what is the conditioned worldview this person's conditioned with in many lifetimes? So what does this person think the world is like or should be like? And that will have to do with family as an incubator for karmic themes, so family of origin, but also what that person believes the world is like, so we'll keep behaving accordingly. Number 3, South Node ruler by sign, the ruler of the South Node sign. How does this person show up as a unique individual in many lifetimes? Special skills and talents, a deep layer of identity that recurs through many, many, many lifetimes. Deeper level of identity than sun, moon, rising. Sun and moon may be involved in that story. Maybe the ruler of will be the ruler of Cancer or Leo Cancer, respectively. But that's number 3. Who do I think I am? Number 4, the North Node. What have I not been taught but really need to learn to stretch into? What do I not want to learn or not want to have to do because those people do it? Like people who are the opposite of what I believe is normal, South Node, conditioned worldview. So let me just use Pluto, a couple of examples. Pluto in the first house. From what you know about your astrology studies, the first house, you'll have different keywords than I might use, but I'll just give you some ideas that I use. First of all, I'll say that the way that I think of houses, a house relates to or contains all parts of life that fit with this archetype, right? Mars is the planet in your psyche, the part of you seeking expression. Aries is the lens or the mode of expression that is Mars-like, or that it has Mars qualities, the mode of expression. The house, all the parts of life that have to do with body, independence, leadership, portion of sexuality, some portion of health. Those 2 things show up in different parts of the chart too. But the idea of like independence, calling my own shots, going it alone, sometimes leadership, sometimes the need to develop courage, right? All the parts of life that require you to develop courage, those are first house parts of life. Thrill seeking, adventure seeking, doing something on your own that you've never done before, like bursting forth, trailblazing. So the first house. So Pluto in the first house. If you say, oh, well, you are amazingly independent and you always steer the ship of your own life and call your own shots. And if you get specific like that with a person, you're missing something. Because over the course of many, many lifetimes, that person will choose to go it alone and feel courageous, maybe scared and also courageous. That person may be pushed out of a group. That person might be told 1 billion times over many lifetimes, you don't belong here, to force that development of courage, right? That person might, the idea of the first house of like, I have to make decisions for myself. Well, maybe in some lifetimes that works out well and the person loves herself. Maybe in some lifetimes it doesn't work out well and she judges herself. Maybe she walks into a room carrying Pluto energy and people say, oh, what an amazing, confident person. Let's put her in charge of something. What if in other lifetimes she walks into the room and people say, I think she's a witch. I don't know. I don't like her. Let's make up a reason. Let's make up a reason to shame her. Make her wrong. Project on her. If she tells the truth, she threatens the group. She threatens everybody. She's dangerous. Well, look at her. Another thing about Pluto in the first house is that wellspring of intense emotions. The person needs to process them and will feel them physically. Maybe this person has anger issues. Maybe that person's shamed and projected upon for being an angry, difficult person. So Pluto in the first house represents all of these things regarding sexuality. That's where I want to get more specific. Let's say somebody says, somebody sees Pluto in the first house, a reader, and says, oh, well, you have, I don't want to be too weird here, but like, maybe somebody says like, you might force yourself on other people sexually sometimes, or you might have been sexually abused. Well, those are possibilities that result from the need to process intense Plutonian emotions through the body. Plutonian urges and desires, deep, serious, volcanic desires, right? And emotions, and fears and pains. But if you get really specific, you miss something. So how I would talk about Pluto in the first regarding sexuality is, over the course of many lifetimes, you have an intense desire nature and you're trying to figure out what to do with it. I'm not going to assume the person has been harmed or has harmed others. I'm not going to tell the person that. Or if I do, I'll say something like, over the course of many lifetimes, in the process of learning about what power is and isn't regarding sexuality, you might have found yourself in different positions where you're not sure if your desires are welcome, or other people might bring their desires to you and you need to say no. And if the person says, well, yeah, I was raped, or yeah, I didn't mean to be pushy, but somehow I got blamed for harming somebody. I didn't mean to do that. I just opened up. So if you are very specific, you miss something always. Okay, that's like the general terrain of the first house: independence, leadership, making decisions for myself, the body, sexuality, whatever. Making decisions and dealing with the consequences. Do I like respect myself? Can I deal honestly with my feelings? Whatever. I want to pick another one. Let's say sixth house. Contains all the parts of life that have to do with improving things, being of service, being a good team player, learning through unequal power dynamics, or being of service in unequal power dynamics, unequal relationships. So the idea is like master apprentice, master servant, master slave. That's one version. Or somebody who does your nails or cuts your hair, somebody who cleans things for you or cleans up after people. Sixth house, right? But it's also where you're a good team player and you backburner certain egoic desires. Now it's also a house of all the parts of life that involved observing what isn't working well, and then perhaps discerning a solution, and then navigating what it means to take responsibility for fixing it, or if you do or don't feel responsible. So it's quite a lot. You can see as I'm explaining this, it's not just work or service. Work and service achieve these ends. So Pluto in the sixth house says, I'm empowered and disempowered in many lifetimes, over the course of billions of lifetimes, right? Through such dynamics and behaviors. When I feel not equal, or when I observe others are not equal, when I possess a great deal of knowledge and others don't have it, or vice versa, like master apprentice. When I'm a good team player and others aren't, or when others are and I'm not. Like maybe I'm disempowered by backburnering my egoic desire. Maybe I'm empowered through seeing what isn't perfect and figuring out ways to fix it. Maybe I really feel good about myself and confident and strong, other versions of saying empowered. Maybe I feel great about myself and I feel really accomplished when I streamline a process and make things more efficient. When I come up with a new solution and implement it and everything's easier for everybody. Like through my analysis and discernment, I'm able to change things, improve things, fix how things work. Or actually helping you master a skill, becoming a master herbalist or a body worker or something so that I can help you. So if you say to Pluto in the sixth house something very specific, you miss the broad picture that is truth. So let's say that you have in your head that Pluto in the sixth house, maybe there's power struggles with like supervisors or something, like those unequal relationships. Maybe you see that in there and you say, or a person would look at somebody with Pluto in the sixth and say something like, I think that you are really angry about being demeaned at work. Well, maybe that person is in a habit of being a productive solution provider and everybody loves him. If you say, look, you're really good at fixing problems and everybody loves you for it. No, that person might routinely bring up solutions and be scapegoated as the problem. Remember, telling the truth is a Plutonian thing. Maybe that person says, this isn't efficient, this isn't working, and everyone says, what's your problem? Why can't you just accept your status. You're an assistant. Why are you making all this noise, right? So if you lay out multiple possibilities because of a rich understanding of what that house, what parts of life that house contains, then you have, then you're able to reach people. Another example, Pluto sign. Pluto in Libra. You might have learned or been told a billion times in classes and by teachers and in books that Libra is about balance. In fact, Libra, so if you saw somebody with Pluto in Libra, you might say something like, oh, you're really good at maintaining relationships. Well, Pluto in Libra says I'm disempowered or empowered through the process of trying to create fairness, harmony, balance. So Pluto and Libra people sometimes define themselves by how others treat them. So if you tell the truth or are working out Plutonian emotions and others say stop it, well, you might stop telling the truth. You might not be able to maintain relationships. Or if you have a self-esteem problem because others reject you, you're not good at maintaining relationships. Similarly, Pluto and Scorpio. So important to tell the truth and right, but Pluto and Scorpio people are disempowered through realizing the depths of their emotions. They might be afraid. They might have been shamed by expressing deep emotions. So you have to look at these things, in my view, in a different way than what we're typically accustomed to. And so the way I teach, it starts with you as an energetic being, as consciousness. And then looking at every archetype in the chart, every planetary archetype, every planet, every sign, every house, as containing ranges of possibilities. Like, let's go back to the Saturn example. I led with it would be not true if you said Saturn equals your father. Well, Saturn in your birth chart indicates how you like what the maturity, discipline, authority function within you, how that's going to develop and what it needs to grow over time into competency. Naturally, you're going to have external models in the form of other people at different times. So you will be presented with a bunch of different examples of authority, some of which may be very unpleasant, and you need to say, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, A, don't treat me that way, and B, I'm not going to become that. So Saturn in your chart is authority figures, but I'm encouraging you to, like how you deal with them and how you may become one. But I'm encouraging you to look at it in terms of all of these things simultaneously. It's not your father or even your parents together. It's not older people. It's not bosses. I mean, it's all these things, but it's not specifically those things. So when it comes to Saturn issues, for example, I will give a client this broad stroke thematic landscape, right? I'll paint this picture. And then that person can say, oh, no, yeah, that's my big brother. Or, oh, yeah, that's my boss. Or, oh, yeah, that's every boss and teacher I've ever had, right? So that way that person can say, here's how it shows up for me. There's an article on my site called, one of the first articles I put up there years and years ago, like 2006 or 8 or something, called The Multidimensional Nature of the Astrological Symbols. And this gets to that. This has been on my mind since I started doing astrology. In that article, I use the example of, let's say we're looking to understand what evolutionary or what growth-oriented purpose might, a challenging scenario occur. And I think I used in that, if somebody's house were to burn down and that person asked an evolutionary astrologer, why did this happen? Well, looking through the lens of a person needs to become empowered through sometimes facing adversity, that's the broad thing. But like, let's say that something's going on in your 4th house. Well, maybe your home, your foundation, the slate's wiped clean so you can establish a better foundation. Maybe it's in your, maybe you have a third house thing going on, so maybe you need to figure out new solutions or get new answers. Maybe it's a sixth house thing going on. You have to figure out how to get your hands on things and how to fix things. Maybe the process of lining up all the details to get things fixed or rebuilt, maybe that serves your journey. So any life event or any way that a person relates to us, like authority figure, mom, dad, whatever, the more specific we are, the more we miss stuff. Like the same experience that happens to different people happens for different reasons to those people along their journey of learning how to be conscious, more conscious, the evolution of consciousness, learning how to be human. So be specific, but allow that specifics do occur. Yeah, I mean, I can even speak to that thing about moon opposite Saturn. Let's revisit that for the second time here, or let's revisit that. My moon's in Sagittarius, in the third house. My mom is a foreign language teacher. Sagittarius, third house. My moon is conjunct Mercury, too, in Sagittarius. So she has been a singer and a musician. She's been a poet, moon in the third house. My dad was a radio broadcaster, Sagittarius, third house. My dad was a radio broadcaster. The Saturn and Gemini in the ninth, they were both involved in radio, actually. They're both writers. He wrote ad copy and jokes, and she wrote poetry and curricula. So it's like you can't tease that out. They're both those symbols in my chart in different ways. When you look at personality-wise, my mom has a strong kind of 10th house flavor, and she's kind of authoritative. My dad wasn't at all. So if you think about it in terms of delineation according to expectations of gender roles, nah, didn't work that way in my family. My mom has Pluto in the 10th. My dad has Pluto in the 4th. My mom has an executive quality. My dad had a stay-at-home, be quiet quality. Like, even though he was on the radio, when he wasn't on the radio, he was home being quiet. So you can't be specific about gender and stuff. I even think this applies to the third house and siblings. Maybe it does apply, but maybe not. I think that's a holdover from an old version of astrology. Anyway, so I encourage you not to be too specific. I encourage you to have the intention of reaching people where they are. This is a good way to think of it. Reaching people where they are. This is really one of the major things I learned from Steve Forrest's work. Reaching people where they are. Don't tell them where they should be. Don't tell them, don't imply you're doing it wrong if you haven't had this kind of experience. No, you're having certain experiences that unfold your archetypal journey, that are your archetypal journey as a human unfolding. So you learn different things at different times. For some people, the way to become an authority figure is a vastly different path than other people. For some people, the way to nurture is a vastly different path than some other people. And it doesn't mean, just like, this is another thing. Let's say you see somebody with a lot of fourth house planets, and you assume that person's oriented toward having family or is a parent, like an adult who is a parent, or a younger person, and you assume that person wants to have children. You don't know that. You don't know that. So themes about emotions and stability and rootedness, themes about family are important, but it doesn't mean that person's going to become a parent. So the person has a strong series energy in his or her chart. Doesn't mean the person will be a bio parent or an adoptive foster parent. Doesn't mean that. It also doesn't mean that person will have 15 dogs or 25 cats. It doesn't mean that, but it could. But you talk about the urge to nurture. You talk about the need to be nurturing. Well, that's a different thing. That could happen through a job where the person doesn't have personal connections but makes professional things personal in a certain way to be a nurturing figure. Anyway, all these myriad examples, I just want to put your attention on that. Fifth house doesn't mean children. Third house doesn't always mean neighbors. Moon doesn't always mean mother or women. Venus doesn't mean women necessarily. Mars doesn't mean any particular thing, but it means a vast array of things simultaneously. But all of us experience these energies differently according to our own paths. So check out Evolutionary Astrology Basics 1, the home study course to help you learn about how I deal with soul, which informs everything I do. So if you're thinking about studying with me, start there. Evolutionary Astrology Basics 1 home study course. I did start this week Evolutionary Astrology Basics 2. It's been like 2 years that I've been having this on my list, and I've been uprooted, hence the hotel bit. Anyway, so I've actually started doing it. I'm hoping it's done in a couple months. It's quite a lot of effort, and I have to get my head in a certain space that's hard to do in a hotel, feeling uprooted. Now we're all on a lockdown, so I can't even go to a cafe and zone out. So anyway, and also the Soul's Journey Soundbite database. I think currently there are, I don't know, almost 600, maybe over 600. I can't even remember. 15 to 25 minute MP3 readings where I delineate charts according to the karmic angle. Be clear, it's not general readings, that's karmic story readings. So if you want to really understand where people are coming from, the evolutionary approach is the way to go. All right, thanks for your time and energy. Check all that out at tdjacobs.com. Take care.